Welcome to a new episode of the Advancing Consciousness series with Franco Di Nicola. This is a place where people can come to gain further insight and clarity as to what is going on and how we can shift things on a personal and global level, while also accessing higher levels of consciousness and awareness. We bring this series to you free of charge so that many are able to access this information. However, if you resonate with what Franco shares and you would like to support his work, contributions are welcomed and greatly appreciated. A link is in the description and will be provided in the chat if you feel guided to do so. Also, we have many previous workshops, such as a couple of our most recent, Maneuvering with Neutrality and Alignment during this next wave of unfoldments, and Deprogram Clearing Empowerment Workshop. You could also join us in our membership program, Let's Talk About You, where like-minded people come together bi-weekly to talk about the topics requiring deeper understanding and clarity. All of these are available on Teachable, and we encourage you to check them out as they are great resources at very affordable prices to assist in better understanding this human experience. The Teachable link will also be provided in the chat and description. And lastly, don't forget to share. As the more of us coming together and creating a shift in oneself, the more effective it'll be to shift things globally. Thank you for joining us and being part of the change. Enjoy today's broadcast.
Welcome everybody to another episode of Advancing Consciousness series. Today we have episode 73. So we're going to cover a little bit of a topic, and then we're going to continue with the questions that came in and the questions that are coming in right now. We've chosen to do the questions because there's been a lot of questions that we haven't been able to answer at different points in time because of everything else that we've been doing in regards to topics and things of that nature, and not to get off topic. So today we're kind of going to part 2 of addressing your questions to help you flourish. So the first thing we want to talk about is true self, and that was really key and instrumental for us today to discuss, because if we really truly want to make a powerful change, and what stepping into our natural state, being our true self is key and powerfully instrumental to change so much in our lives at this point in time. So this is the reason that we're covering that today. So let's get started with that. First thing I wanted to mention, was there anything that we needed to cover ahead of time?
I don't think so.
No? Nothing? Okay. So if you are watching it on whatever platform and you're new, please share, like, subscribe, wherever platform you're on, because we're on Facebook, YouTube, Vimeo, and so forth. So it's wherever platform you're on. It helps us reach more people, and that is always beneficial, because as more people get exposed to the material, they remember more and they're able to create more powerful shifts. So being your true self is the very first thing we're going to look at, and then we'll continue with the questions. So what does that mean, true self? I mean, all of us have heard it to some degree or another, what this whole thing, what is our true self? And you say, well, am I not being my true self? Well, I think I'm going to knock somebody's socks off today, or quite a few people's, because we're now going to look at the two versions of ourselves. Now, I'm not an artist, so you're going to be looking at some stickmen. So at this point in time, stick people, I shouldn't say men, people. Of course, they're always happy. And I'm not even that great in the stick department. All right. Look at that. Look at that.
That's good, honey. Beautiful work of art.
Artistic work.
Try and hang it on the wall.
Yes. We're going to put it on the refrigerator. How's that? All right. So here we are. We have two versions of ourselves. We have our true self. This is our natural self. Okay? So we have our true self, and we have an self. What's the difference? I didn't know we even had a AI self. Well, true self is made up of quite an interesting combination here. Now, both have the same combination, but the focal point of what is played out and how it's experienced, there's a difference there. So the first part we're going to look at, in the true self part, of course, we have an innate body. Okay? So we're looking at the body. And that applies with this one too, body. We also have a human entity. And I'm not going to do this. How come I always have an issue with this? Entity. Seems like I always make a mistake there. And then multidimensional. Oops, again. Dimensional soul. And of course, we have our overall consciousness. Now, and this applies to both, so I'll put the arrow here too. Now, our true self is the part of you that wants to be the fullest expression that you came here to be. So your body wants to express the highest version of itself. How does it become the highest version? Through multiple incarnations. From day one, which was 15,000 years ago for this particular physicality, and all the incarnations it has, each and every layers of experiences it had, every level of coming to a level of understanding and consciousness and experientially enriched. But the human body is also a direct connection to Gaia, the planet itself, which is also a sentient being. And as it evolves, it helps evolve the body because they're interconnected. It's an extension of it. Doesn't matter if it comes from mom and dad. Mom and dad are extensions of that too. This is before you apply any other part. Now, everything on the planet, all plant life, all the animal kingdom, oceanic kingdom, the insect world, the reptile world, the birds, and so forth, are all part of Gaia. All of it is communicating with Gaia, Gaia is communicating with that, and that is also shared with us. We also have different species that are inside the planet, which we call the inner earth, and we're not talking about the ones underground, we're talking about the ones in the center of the earth, and that is also communicating. So everything that is being experienced over the last 15,000 years have evolved and expanded and modified and upgraded every facet of that. But again, we have to understand that the sun, the energy is coming from other planets in our solar system, the streaming that we're getting from the galactic central, which is basically all of that is coming through, and the universe is all beaming down on planet Earth. Now, we're not just receiving it from our bodies. Our bodies are also receiving inputs of all the so-called receivers. Everything on the planet is a receiver. It's also getting those codes. It's also expressing itself through it. And it's also creating a beautiful movement. So if this is the planet, Earth, or Gaia, whatever you want to call it, say Earth, everything that is experienced in Earth is moving through our bodies and back to Earth and so forth. And every sentient being is the same. But Earth, of course, is connected to the whole solar system, so there's an exchange going on with the solar system. There's an exchange going in through all the planets that are within our galaxy, and also all that is experienced from different galaxies within the universe itself. So there's a beautiful dance, and it's always constantly evolving and so forth. Now, we have to understand that planet Earth and our physicalities are basically part of the playground. So the physicalities are what we use to play on the playground, and of course planet Earth is the playground. So there's tremendous amount of consciousness. There's a innate, what we call innate consciousness being developed within the bodies itself. Now, then we have a human entity, which is an earth soul, and that is specifically assigned, and both have, the true self and that, the earth soul of the human entity is the part that also reincarnates. Now, the difference is that it records its experiences. It's also recording what the human experience represents. And that's recording male and female, and it's also recording everything in between, but it's also recording all other expressions from different parts of the planet, in different stages of evolution on the planet, through also the different genetics that it takes on. So what's happening? The body is communicating on both parties. Okay, this one happens to be over there. But the body communicates with the human entity communicates with the body, and there's a movement there. And of course, all of these components. So you can see how this is evolving. Now, the purpose of the human entity is to record its experiences and to use it again and develop it even further in the next incarnation. So the human entity keeps the skill sets, and it continues to evolve its skill sets. And this is why a lot of people that are coming on have capacities and capabilities that have never been learned, because it has been experienced and practiced over lifetimes, over the 15,000 years. And of course, some of the areas started to be expanded later on because it wasn't applicable in the earlier times. So the human entity is kind of a soul. Basically, it's an earthbound soul that actually reincarnates. So it continues to grow and expand and so forth. All right. Then you have, and I know this is a lot, we have our multidimensional soul. Our multidimensional soul is basically a soul that could incarnate anywhere, on any planet, could stay in non-form and so forth. Plays on different dimensions, on different realms, could be early in projected futures and so forth as probabilities and it gains a lot of experience. So it brings a multidimensional component to it. So it is also, when this connection occurs, body, human entity, and soul, all of it is evolving together. Every facet is learning from each other and expanding each other. This, what I've described, is what we can call our true self. Our true self is allowing all of this in its natural state. So the overall consciousness that exists I'm making a big mess here, but anyways, let's see if I can move that out of the way. Multi-dim. So the overall consciousness continues to evolve, and that is the makeup of all of this feedback and its personal current experience that it's going through from birth till now. So from the moment you were born to now, besides all of the things that you've downloaded from your parents, specifically your mom, and also whatever the genetic encodements came in, you received all of that, and it evolved you and also programmed you and conditioned you. Now, so this was a natural design, what we call our true self. Okay? So we have our true self. That is in its natural state without any disconnect. Now, the body had one other facet, and that was 12 DNA. And I won't go into that because I've covered it in other parts. The 12 DNA, each DNA strand is a transmitter receiver to a particular species that contributed. They're evolving, they're communicating, and that is also made available. So we are advancing very powerfully on so many levels without any interference of any sort. And that makes the true you. That you does not need to be conditioned. That you does not need to be programmed. It may learn certain facets of how the game is played, but it does not need to be programmed to follow a pattern, a cookie cutter type of experience. It is not taking away its natural abilities, natural state, and be conditioned to play differently. It does not have to fall into any form of category in its true self. Because when it's not being compressed and shaped and so forth, it continues to evolve much more freely flow and also continue to advance in a very powerful way without any of those levels of restriction. The true self does not have to be sick. The true self does not need to age. The true self has a really strong connection to its essence and its life force and the consciousness behind it all. Okay? Your true self will allow itself to open up and share, because each and every one of us in our true state are here to contribute. Besides coming here to play, to experience, to learn, to become more enlightened, we are contributing to the advancement of the whole. What are we advancing? We're advancing the whole human species. We're advancing the playground we call Gaia. We are advancing the whole solar system. And we're assisting in the advancement of the whole galaxy that we're connected to and the universe. Every part is doing exactly the same, and nothing of it, or none of it, is restricted in any way, shape, or form. Then we have this other version called the AI self. This is the artificial intelligent self. This self is not natural. This self is heavily imposed. This self requires repetitive programming. This self has disconnected many facets of it. So what we have been playing for most of our life, pretty well everyone that's on the planet, is this artificial self, the conditioned programmed self. You started off in your natural true state with a little bit of this because what you collected through your parents and lineages and so forth, but as we went along, we became much more evolved in the artificial self. The artificial self uses a particular software, and that software is called ego. So what happens here? It overrides your true self. Your true self does not identify itself as, I am this, I am that, I am whatever. It does not try to fit in the sense of trying to fit in because it's trying to replicate other AI selves. It just expresses itself fully, and in its natural state, it will play with all and contribute with all in a state of flourishing rather than survival, struggle, and anything of that nature. So this software becomes an instrument for this AI self. Now, the AI self, as you notice, goes through major programming and major reinforcement and upgrading constantly. This is why we are bombarded by many different inputs, not only from your parents, from education, from the media, from every other artificial intelligence dived into playmate that are putting us and conditioning us over and over again. This is who you are. This is how you play the game. You need to be like us. You have to take on these roles. There's only so many roles, and you have to take one of these roles. You got to slot in there, and then you have to give all your time into playing the system so that you can survive, so that you can create an artificial life. It's not mentioned that way. Artificial life. Artificial life focused on stuff, focused on status, focused on having, certain things under your control. And all of this is artificial. It's not you. Okay? But then it doesn't stop there, because you say, okay, great, I've created this AI self of myself. So now I have this, illusionary, because it is illusionary, version of ourselves. This needs reinforcement over and over again. This is why we're continuing, because if any of that stopped, we would start to dissolve this very quickly and we would go into our natural state. Now, of course, a lot of the energies that are coming in, a lot of the stuff that we've been working on with ourselves, especially people that are on a path of kind of deprogramming yourself, what you're deprogramming is the AI and the grip that the AI has, the artificial intelligence, the artificial you. The artificial you is labeled this or that. The artificial you basically sees itself as a slot or a piece in the puzzle, and that puzzle has to fit whatever was molded before. So that's what happens. But you know, this artificial intelligent self fragments itself. So you have a version of it with your family. You're going to have a version with your partner. You're going to have a version at work. A version with, say, your role playing as a parent, if you choose to do that. And there are many versions with what you can call friends, social groups, let's call it groups, and so forth. So what you do is you allow yourself, with the belief that I need to create versions of myself wherever I am. That is artificial intelligence component, the facade version of you. Because the true self of you does not create compartments, doesn't even create any of this, and does not operate in the software we call the ego, which is a plugin that was put in before. So no matter if it's with its family or partner, if it's at work, it's with their, as a parent role, as with friends, with any particular group of whatever it is, it's still true self. It does not change. It actually is the highest expression, which is always constantly evolving at all times. It does not play a different role at that point or label itself by it. Because then there is also culture. There is also versions that are an overlay of these versions of where you're born on the planet, what the country represents or the community represents. So there's an overlay on that. So you have that, which overlays with wherever you're living, which overlays with other aspects of it, of the culture, and then your upbringing, you're creating other layers, and then all of the roles that you take on. And these roles are not consistent. The roles are going to be very flexible depending where and the time that you come onto the planet. Okay? So what you've done is you've basically, this has created many, many versions of yourself. When you are playing those versions, you're never a whole expression. Are you in any way creating an advancement opportunity for yourself and the collective? The answer is no. Very minimal, if at all. Because what happens is, as soon as you step into one of these slots, because there's also your immediate personal family and your extended family, when you step into those slots, when you're fully governed by this, you will adopt and play the role as it is expected within that unit. You will talk the same or similar, you're going to interact, you're going to consume the same foods or whatever it is, or at least a close variance of it. You're going to step into the role, which all of this is great if you're creating that as part of an experience, and we've all agreed to do so, and that was fine. But in essence, when we're playing with all of this here, you're creating so many facets of yourself that each one is stagnating you in a certain way. And that's fun for a while. But we're getting to that point where we're being pushed to break all of that, to really go back into our natural state, because as a child you have more of this and very little of this. This becomes more online as you go through the years and through the conditioning and programming and observation and being kind of convinced that you have to take on these roles and so forth. So now you create this non-you as part of your experience. And like I said, you can look at this and say, okay, great, and I got to play a lot of different roles. Fantastic. But now what we're doing with the changes that are going on, it's shifting all of this, dropping all of this, and going into your true self. Because in your true self, you have self-realization. You see yourself as who you are. You are spirit of creation. You are source. Source, spirit, creator. As the creator, you realize your own creation and you observe the creation. In your true self, it doesn't matter what propaganda or anything else that has been projected to you, you're not fazed by it. You see it as an opportunity. How do I reshape it? Not because you have a judgment about it or any issues with it. You reshape it to provide you the opportunity to not only learn really quickly from it, but to transform it completely. Like I was saying, as the true self, you don't have to buy into the aging, the deterioration. You don't have to consume certain foods or whatever it is. You're going to see a lot of different things are going to be different. And your true self, you really recognize the fun factor of playing here and also being a powerful contributor at the same time. Because every time another agenda, narrative, or anything that we're receiving from mainstream, from others, and so forth, the part that gets scared, the part that reacts, the part that feels lost, the part that feels out of balance is this part. It's the artificial self that's run by the software that has been all broken down into all of these compartments. And I know Kimberly's saying, "Well, look at him scribbling all over the place." She has a blast when I do that. So, right now, as long as we are putting focus on this, the artificial version of it, then whatever's projected will redirect you, will affect you, will change your state, will play different roles within yourself so that you are not accessing that source creator essence of yourself. You're basically, as long as all of this is playing, you are further disconnected from your true self. Because true change is accessing your true self. True change is self-realization and self-creation rather than being governed how to create. Because the artificial intelligence looks at others, looks at the world, looks at the system, and then tries to fit in. Tries to use all of that as part of the makeup of their reality. This is why when a system gets rocked in some way or another, there's a panic, because this part knows only that. It relies and depends on it because it's its crutch, it's its foundation. How dare you crash anything and everything, or any part of it, because this will tear down my house of cards. And that's all I know. I spent years learning how to play this game. I don't know anything about that game. But the best part is this game is natural. This game doesn't even have to be learned. That part of you wants to be birthed from its hideout that it got put into. Wants to come out. That part doesn't require programming conditioning. This is why what we're going through is deprogramming. And stuff that like we're doing right now, we're just triggering the memory that this true self knows. So it comes to the surface more. Because when you are your true self, you are now the designer of your reality rather than being designed by your reality. This is shaped, designed by the reality that exists, by what the collective is projecting, what the narratives and all of the so-called role players are projecting. This one doesn't look at that. It basically says, I design what I choose to design because I am the designer. And the reality will follow my design because that's how it's really constructed. The world is shaping for us, but we are the shapers. But when we create this facade, so this whole inverted matrix that we were in was building this and supporting this, the artificial intelligent version of you. And there's nothing to condemn about this. We all took it. We all accepted it. We all had that experience. And it's so easy to fall into this. Because all of us, at one point or another, adopt an idea. And because this doesn't even stop there, it stops on yourself. So let's look at self. What does it do? It shapes what you feel about yourself, what you think you are. Good, bad, right, wrong, failure, success, whatever. Self-judgment. This also says you're sick and you have to be sick and you have to keep playing the role. That you have to play this role, that role. Because of stuff that's going on a lot of times with people, I don't know who I am. It's this self that's dissolving, and we haven't grasped the true self yet. Because the true self will never ask, who am I? True self knows that's an infinite essence of sourceness that has come here to play. And it has no barriers, no particular locked up roles, and it does not have to support any particular layout of what the reality provides. It sees what's there and utilizes it there, but shapes it along the way. So this will let you know who you are. Good enough, not good enough. You failed, it didn't fail. It's going to, AI is going to let you feel how you fit in. Some of you may have gone to school. Some of you have, at different stages in your life, have been in groups and communities and so forth. And at some point you may have felt inadequate or felt that, in some way that whatever people thought of you was a reflection of who you were. If they said nasty things or they bullied you or didn't say very nice things, that was the part that you adopted. But that was this. Creating this. The AI self. Go ahead.
Sherry's asking, how do we dissolve AI ego and express out true self?
Well, you have to come to one of the workshops we have to still create. Yeah, we'll talk about that. Okay. Okay, hold that one. Just remind me if I forget. Okay. So the identity of ourselves, the AI version of it, the artificial one, okay, is the one that's going to have issues with interactions. It's the one that says, I am, what's the word? Fragile. I need to have support. I need to be told that I'm great. I need to have proof that I did the right thing or this and that, or that I need to have other people tell me how to live my life. That's the artificial version. The true self does not relate with that at all. It doesn't matter what anybody says or anything happens at any point in time. It's self-governed, self-directed, that's the word. Self-directed. It does not require any external confirmation. It has internal, and it doesn't even look for confirmation. It just does what it does naturally. Express, be its essence. The essence is the body in its evolved state, the human entity / your soul in its divine state, multidimensional aspect of it, and the combination of the overall consciousness, which is all of this, including the connection it would have with Earth. That's how it would relate itself. It just basically, and it doesn't have a reliance with anything, it's just communicating very freely. It's self-knowing. It knows its source. It knows that it's come here to do whatever it came here to do, and it's going to do it with playfulness and lightness and so forth. It's not going to adopt the ideas that, oh, this is going to hurt you, and that's going to do this and so forth. And it says, well, that's great if you want to play there. I'm not playing there. But it won't even put attention to that. That's the thing. So what are we doing? We're going through this transformation where we're purging all of this and becoming more of our true self. Now, some of us create a version of AI at certain stages in our life for survival, for security. Because this was not so strong, and the reliance was more into this, it looked at the environment, it wanted to express, and it was doing so to a certain degree, but noticed that it was getting backlash. Because its grounding was not as strong and not as flexible yet, because it was still learning itself how to do that, then it depended on the AI. So what did it do? It created a version of themselves so that they would not rock the boat in the family. They wouldn't rock the boat with a partner. They won't rock the boat on with work, with their parenting role, with friends or groups. And this is a coping mechanism of sorts. And I've also realized myself in my own experience just recently. I was aware of it, but it really didn't hit home until just recently, where I had created a version of myself, of the AI self, to cope with the family dynamics I was coming through. Because when I started off, for the first 4 years, I was coming in as my true self, with no barriers. I didn't put on the brakes. I just went full throttle. That was not accepted so well in the family dynamics or in the community. Because at that point in time, and the combination of evolutionary or level of access of consciousness, it was very rocking to all the other AIs that were there, because they already had limits. This is not something you should be able to do. You can't talk that way. You're upsetting some deity. What are the neighbors going to think? That I have a crazy kid talking like this? Family abuse and things of that nature. Okay, well, if I speak out, I get this. Maybe I have to adjust it. So you now create a version of yourself that is more acceptable within, say, the family dynamics, or your school world, or any place. There's so many variances. Because at that point in time, you say, okay, and that's okay, you could use that for a period of time. But sometimes you don't realize that part of that is still active. It's like, wait a minute, if I speak out, and it's deep-seated in the behind, because the AI part of it, which this software said, if I speak the way I'm speaking right now, I get in trouble. I upset people, they think I'm nuts, and so forth. And that started at age 4. And it upgraded at different stages along the way as you continue to play. Especially when other gifts came in and it was a little more difficult to even express it to anybody because you couldn't have a conversation with anybody about your experiences because there was nobody that were ready to listen to it because the majority of the people, including a part of myself, was AI. So to even speak the way I am now, when I started to be more public, 35 years, 36 years ago, it had to be a little bit different. But as a child, it was a huge resistance that came back. So I really nurtured a version of AI self. And then to go play particular roles, because it wasn't ready for me to do the other role, I had to create another version in the work environment and take on different roles. So the realization came, that's still in play. So now it's, how do we shift back into our true state? Because our true state, like I said, doesn't have to play with all the rules of how it is to be human. What limits it has, whatever it put its focus on. I had a lovely soul that came here a week ago, almost a week ago, that basically said, hey, do you feel like you have 2 versions of yourself? That triggered for me to say, okay, it didn't leave me for the whole night. And in the morning I realized there is 2 versions of me. There is the true self and another self that hasn't really dissolved. Yeah, it morphed, it changed, or whatever else. It may have minimized to a certain degree, but there was still a pretty strong part of that that was playing out. And that part gave power to what it was experiencing, not only physically and otherwise. So we're all going through that. So the thing is, how do we step out of this? One of the factors is to notice all your stories, programs, and belief systems that are all based on here. So the choice you can make at this point, you can go through the exercise I've shared before. You can get into a quiet space, and I'm just sharing what I use, okay? Go into a quiet space, or wherever you're not going to be disrupted, and then you connect with yourself. So what you're going to do is you can quieten yourself down by just focusing on the breath for a few minutes. But really what you're going to do is you're going to call in your soul. You're going to ask your soul to fully embody. Activate the highest level of home frequency that your body can take and this environment can handle. Then you ask yourself, I want the highest version of myself to be fully embodied right now. Activating the highest level of source essence right now. Activating pure love, source love within myself, and feel that glowing. Ask your body to go into its most innate reserves of its highest aspects of expression of itself. And now you ask all of it to align, balance, and unify. And then you say to yourself, I choose to be my true self from this moment. And anything that resembles the older version of you, the moment you see yourself going into that old version, you basically say, I choose to be fully my true self. It's going to take a bit to do that every time because it's easy to drift off into this. I do it myself. Whenever I see that certain things are playing out within myself that is not of my highest essence, and when I mean by that, physically not feeling a certain way or certain emotions or whatever is being triggered of any sort, then I know that I've drifted off into here. Because this part does not get caught up into that. So I just basically say to myself, I choose right this moment to go into my true self. If I have to say it a few times, I will. And then in your true self, see how that feels. Get acquainted to that, because sometimes it'd be short glimpse of it. And just give yourself, you become more accustomed to it. Because that part of the self does not have to have all of those accentuated anything, physically and otherwise. You will have certain experiences, but it doesn't take over. It does not govern in any way, shape, or form. At that point, fear, frustration, the realism and the power that the game may have been adopted to be fades away. So you practice that. You practice what I've just shared. And you get to see that you get into your true self. And it will take a little while to keep bringing yourself back into that. So you just say, I activate my true self. And if you need to bring all the other parts together every so often, do so. If you wake up in the morning and you're feeling, not so great, before you get out of bed, stay in that state. Ask your body to your soul fully to embody. Completely, right now, activate home frequency to the highest frequency available for me to have and harness in this body. I call in my highest version of myself. And what I mean by highest version, when you say highest version, is the version of you that you've had a glimpse of where you feel empowered, you feel invincible of sorts, where the stuff that's going on does not affect you in any way. So you call in that highest version. You also call yourself to say, I choose now to fully activate my highest source spirit essence. I also bring forth, illuminate, turn on my pure love state. Source pure love. And then you ask the body, fully, your innate consciousness, full capacity, express yourself fully, completely, and then you just say, all of it, align now. And that creates a shift. Your vibration will go up, your freedom goes up, your viewpoint expands so you can see much more possibilities, you feel energized and so forth. Then any tasks that you're doing is not going to be heavy. You're not going to be dragging yourself. You're going to notice some things that may not be a preference, but you want to look at what the preference is all about. Is there a judgment around it or the fact that it doesn't fit in? Then you could, along the way, take steps to change certain parts of it and say, okay, this is not a fun anymore, or it's not appealing, so I want to change it. I want to shift it, upgrade it to something else. Then you could take the aspect. As you're doing that, you'll notice, even when you're looking at whatever the mainstream is saying, whatever you're looking at, you can now see it for its true state, because in your true self, it's a game. And you are in charge of that. And it is, in fact, the key that makes powerful change within yourself and the collective. Was there a question around that same topic?
No, I was just going to say, then from there, you're living from that space and all your actions and all your responses and everything. So you have to integrate it in. So you can hold the space for that time and do what you were saying. And then when you get into that activated state, then you have to live from there all the time and always be checking in with yourself that you're living from that space. And that's what brings that new world into focus more. So it's not just practicing it once in a while and then go about and do the same patterns
Exactly.
as before. You really have to start breaking the patterns of your old way of doing things and bring that into your life on a regular basis every day. So do something that breaks a pattern of the old 3D world that you know that you're doing, and yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So the thing is, that was excellent. Thank you, Kimberly. The as you're doing your daily routine, whatever your life looks like, whatever you're doing, who you're interacting, and so forth, every so often check: am I being my true self? And just automatically say, I activate within myself my true self. I shift into my true self. Any of those two will be fine. And the other thing that's also highly beneficial is that at night, before you go to bed, or when you're in bed, before you fall asleep, and in the morning, go do what I just described as bringing those parts into place and stepping into your true self. But then when you're in that state, allow yourself to envision what your world looks like, what you want to really bring into your reality. Use your imagination, creativity that supersedes any of the stuff that we've been playing. Once you get to that state, now things are much more viable, and have no expectation how it's going to unfold, but just see already what you are wanting to experience within yourself. Kind of allow your preferences to materialize in your mind's eye. You can see it and feel it. It's best that you feel it and see it, but if you can just feel it, that's great. If you just see it, see it. But while you're seeing it, allow yourself to be in that. Each time it activates even further, locks it in even further, that true self. And by doing so, it becomes very, very powerful as it becomes your new set point. And this is the natural set point. Because in this natural set point, it doesn't matter what's playing out in the world, you're not going to feel that it's hopeless or anything of that nature. And you're actually taking a very powerful active role, not only to reshape your life and to affect everybody else wherever you're going to go, because you're going to take this true self everywhere you go. Now, as your true self, some of this stuff will adjust. How they interact with you, or who's going to play or not going to play, just allow it to take its own form. Because you don't want anybody in any one of these things to hold you back. And they're not really purposely trying to hold you back. They're just making you sure that you're going to stay rock solid with your true self. Because then you're an example to them. You're not going in to fix them or change them, or that I'm going to do it so I can see a better version of my family. You do it because of you. And then while you're interacting with the family, you're actually creating a catalyst state for them to be able to create their own personal shift. But the shifts are always personal. Go ahead.
I was going to add too, in being your true self in your life with your family, your friends, your partner, that there are going to be times when they no longer are going to be in your life. Like you may need to not keep that relationship alive and well, and not like you're going to cut people out on purpose, but sometimes you may have to if you're no longer on the same
aligned or matched.
You're not aligned any longer, because I think that's the hardest part with all of this is in living your true self, that sometimes you do have to let relationships go, and we have a lot of comfort around that, even if it's down within you that it's not serving you anymore. So we really have to be honest about it as well.
Yeah, and when that happens, further openings occur where other individuals will step in or other alignments will take place that will be much more comprehensive, or what we call complementary for your journey. See, the thing is too, as your true self, it doesn't bind or attach or own or control anybody or anything. It basically allows itself just to flow along the way and lets people come and go. Because realistically, the way it really works in a true state is people come and go in your life. It doesn't have to be in that fashion where it just comes and go very quickly. Some could be lasting longer than others, and some don't. But it's not trying to say, well, you know, I'm just going to use this, I have this particular partner and I have to be this certain way for me to keep that partner because, you know, that partner means a lot to me or whatever it is. The point is you be your 100% yourself. If the partner decides to move on or there's a misalignment, then that's fine. You just let it be. You're just going to let it just flow the way it needs to flow, and other individuals will come in, or the fact that you'll be with nobody for a little while or whatever it is as you going through the process. The key right now is bringing your true self in align. It's wanting to come through very powerfully. And like I said, as your true self, you're not governed by whatever's going on the planet right now. It's not governed by whatever is playing out in any way, shape, or form. You're not restricted by it. So the fact that I can't travel, I can't do this and that, it's not going to be a factor. The game may be the game, but at that point in times, other resources and other reconstructing or realignments take place so that whatever is really of highest purpose of a preference to experience or to do will unfold in ways that will support it completely one way or another. So yes, I mean, part of the work we've been doing is purging what? We've been purging all the programs, so forth, of all of this stuff, because all of this AI only resides in that inverted 3D, inverted 2D, and in the inverted matrix. That's why I do it backwards. It only resides in there. All of this is a construct because the inverted matrix was really tied fully with the artificial self and the ego software and all of this part that we created. So, how do we call it? We became hybrids of sort, artificial intelligent hybrid version, which really never really fit who we are as the true self, and we accepted it. We played it for a long time, but now that's what we're doing, is we're reversing every part of it. Is there anything else you wanted to say around that before we move on?
Just there's a question.
Is it around with this?
It had to do with twin flames, and kind of.
Yeah, that doesn't fit in there. We'll cover that separately in another question.
Are we going to get to questions soon?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I was just going to say if there's anything else around that. So the reason we talked about being the true self, because that is the call you have right now, to be your true self, to get acquainted with that true self. That true self has many, 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 many connections that are coming online right now. That true self is very aligned with not only the energies, the codes, the modifications that we're going through, and the necessity for the evolutionary or expansion of the human experience and the playground we call Earth and Gaia, or whatever it is. So that's the part. So a lot of people are looking at what's going on in the world and feel hopeless, feel restricted, feel that everything is closing down, and it is in this world, but not in this world. As the true self, it just sees another opportunity to really play with it and see how fast and how powerful it can shift it without being restriction, where this one sees, oh, my life is getting smaller, my world is getting smaller, I don't have any rights, I have no free will, I have no sovereignty, I have no this. This one knows all of it is fine, and it will take an active role of shifting any part of it. Okay? Good. I think I covered that adequately. So I'll put a clean slate so that we can scribble some more once we have the questions. All right.
Okay,
So we're now going to address questions that we didn't finish last time and go from there.
I'm going to start with the questions from last week that we didn't get done, and then work our way. There's lots of questions, and hopefully we can get to most of them, but we probably will not, and there'll be a repeat next week.
Yeah, we'll have another part.
Continue.
It might be a little while before we get some of the questions covered.
Okay. So the next question that came up was
I was putting in the time so we can find it.
Yes, that's a
Okay.
good idea.
With those massive energies, what can we do when we feel pain in the body? So this was from last week, and about all the energies coming in.
Okay. So if you're feeling extreme pain, and I can relate with it very well, the tendency in that AI version of ourselves, we're going to react and feel uncomfortable, and we're going to feel that somehow something bad might be happening or whatever it is. Now, you're going to have your intuitive part if you need to have medical attention, but as the pains are coming up, it's really basically, it's a transformation that your body's going through. And so what I would suggest at this point in time is if you're having certain pain, take some time, be quiet wherever you're going, go into a quiet space and so forth, and allow yourself to be in present. Focus on the breath and so forth, and be present in the body. So see yourself, feel yourself in the body, and wherever you're having pain, okay, go into the pain. So basically connect with the pain and acknowledge the pain. Acknowledge it. And then thank the pain. And ask the pain, what does it want to share with you? Okay? So by being present, first and foremost, with the pain, it already doesn't have to be as intense. So it starts to shift because it doesn't need to get your attention. A lot of times the extreme is because it's trying to get your attention while you're being distracted. But when you become one-on-one with the pain, in the sense where you're focusing and paying attention to it, not trying to get rid of it, but to be present with it and communicate with it, thank it for its message or whatever it is, ask what the message is, have love for it, and it will allow the energies to move a lot quicker. Because a lot of the pains are the energies that are coming in are moving those stuck energies, those patterned responses. It's also old, what do you call it, residue memory that may be stored in those areas. And there are certain areas that some of us store pain or memories in those areas. And so spend some time to communicate with the body. If you need more rest, you get more rest, whatever it is. Just communicate with the body, be present with the pain, and you'll see that it doesn't have to be as intense when you're with it, because then it doesn't have to increase the intensities to be able to get your attention. I know that very well because I usually try to ignore it in the sense because I want to keep doing what I need to do. But I found if I do spend some quality time with it and connect with it, it can share certain things with me, and at the same time, it can show me also the artificial version of myself that that I've associated with that may be playing out an old role. The energies can stimulate old injuries and things of that nature. At times where we may have had illness or whatever it is that may have not really given the opportunity to be cleared out in the sense, so it may come to the surface again. Use your own inner guidance if you need to get medical attention, but in most cases, first do that part of it, and then if you need to do something else, then that's different. So anything like that. Okay? Good.
Okay, next question.
And some of the pains and stuff like that are going to be very emotional. So you may feel emotions, or once you're connecting with the pain, it may bring up emotions. It may bring up old memories. It may bring up certain things for you. So just realize it's only coming up so that you can acknowledge it, thank it, love it, set it free. Go ahead.
Okay. Next question. How do I move through things when I work in an environment that really thrives in the old world? I work in a hospital and the mask wearing is mandatory. I'm grateful that I don't have to wear my mask all day long, but I am always exposed to the news, even though I never watch it voluntarily. I walk into work feeling great, and then I feel mentally and physically burnt afterward. I want to quit, but hubby would freak out.
Okay. The reason we feel fatigued, the reason we feel drained from the experience is because we're kind of we have an issue. We have a judgment. We have an issue with that whole thing. if you go in there with your main directive, and that is, I'm here to help people. I'm here to create an environment which will nurture other people to create a shift within themselves. And when you have to wear the mask, you wear the mask. When you don't, you don't. But when you're wearing the mask, you still have the smile. You still feel good about it regardless. Eventually, that will all disappear as we go along. But at the same time, we have to realize when you're feeling that way, ask yourself, why am I feeling this way? What's going on? Really, what's playing out for myself? And you will notice that at times there is a resistance or a judgment or uncomfortableness because I am being dictated and so forth. See it as a game. And it's up to you if you want to play the game or not. The thing is, you may not agree, but the game may be either way. So if you're going to enter the game, say, well, okay, I'm going to have to wear this costume, the mask in this case, amongst the other costume being whatever else that you're wearing. Say, I'm going to put on this costume. I'm going to play the role. I'm still going to be me in the true essence of me. And allow yourself to feel that way so that you're of service while you're there rather than just putting in time and waiting to get out of there. If there is that, you want to look at the story behind that. Why do you feel that way? And if it really doesn't feel like something... See, the thing is, you don't want to leave the job because it's uncomfortable. If you choose to leave the job, you leave the job because you're done with it. It just doesn't feel in alignment anymore. But there's no emotional charge. There's no more resistance. There's no judgment in any way around it. It's okay. It's a great job, whatever it is, but I don't feel aligned anymore, and then you can move on. And then you got to be your true self. So if anybody else is not too happy about that, that's too bad for them. And I don't mean it in that way, but that's something that they have to work through. It's your part. You have to feel natural in that regard. But the point is, really be okay with whatever you're experiencing. Get to the point where you're in a state of love because your vibration goes up, and then you're much more powerful to create transformations around with people. So go in with love. Do the process I said. Go to your true self, and emanate that love. See that beautiful ball of light within yourself really expanding outside of you. Wherever you're going, you're illuminating. You practice that at night and in the morning and so forth. And then when you're doing at work, if you forget and you start getting on there and say, oh, no, I'm activating my true self, and see that light blasting out of you. And if you have to wear the mask for any periods of time, at that point in time, still see it as that you're smiling and whatever else behind it, but it's genuine, it's not forced. Go ahead.
Mm-hmm. Okay, next question.
Yep.
Okay. I feel I am reevaluating how I want to make my contribution to this world as a spiritual being. I feel I'm letting go of the have to the want to. Is this common?
Yeah, of course. Well, one of the things when you're going to your true self, there's no more have tos, okay? And you're not even going to want to. You're basically going into a preference. What feels most natural for me? How do I choose to express? How do I choose to play my role? Who do I choose to play with? Where do I put my energies, my focus? That is part of the transformation that you're going to go. So there's a reevaluation, like you said, that's happening, and you're going to look at certain things in your life and say, well, how does it fit in? We have all gone through it. I even gone through it myself. I went through different stages in my life along the way, from even being engineering to doing this work full time, because it was that point, okay, I'm done with this. It's time to do that, because it felt natural. So I reevaluated where I put my focus and energy and where it felt the most aligned. So yes, that's part of the process. It's really connecting with all the energies and the shifting that's going on, and you redirect and you go, okay, what's my preference? What feels most natural for me now? And it is always now, because that will still continue to change, because we're never going to go to what is my purpose. Your purpose, you're going to have multiple different purposes, because it will continue to advance. It's like taking a job, for example, and you're going to evolve with the job, meaning that you're going to play different roles. And we're all playing different roles, and we're not always the same. Okay?
Thanks. Okay. How do we know if we're operating from organic 3D or organic 5D? Which dimension is the quantum realm in, and where are we? How do you see it all?
Okay. So how you can tell it's organic? There's no focus on polarity, right, wrong, good, bad, positive, negative, good, light and dark and all of that stuff. You see everything as a game. You see it. As a quantum, you're basically seeing the picture, the big picture. You're bringing every facet of it and wherever role that you're choosing to play. And you're not going to see all the segmentation, fragmentation. You're not going to get caught up in the polarization. You're going to see yourself in that state as a playmate that's come here. You're doing what you're doing, and you're following what feels inner guidance at that point, and there's none of that other component. So the moment that you're being tossed around, positive, negative, fears, and anything of that nature, then there's an aspect of your inverted 3D, 2D, and 1D. In this case, forget about 1D, or even 2D at this point, but inverted 3D, because if you're listening to this, you can't even be in those two ranges, because at that point, you wouldn't even be open to this. But at the same time, so even in the inverted, so if the world, like whatever you see is affecting you, whatever you're seeing is stimulating emotional charges and reactions and so forth, then we're playing in that, still playing. That doesn't mean that you're always there, but you still have facets of you that is playing in that inverted world, in that inverted 3D and so forth. Because in the organic 3D, you kind of don't get caught up in all of that. You basically see the game and you're shaping the game, even if you're in organic 3D and 5D. When you're looking at quantum, you're looking at the whole big picture. You see the whole game. It goes beyond the Earth. It goes beyond, the solar system and the galaxies. And now you're looking at a really beautiful orchestration. It's a wholeness of all of that. And whatever is playing out, the details and everything else that's playing out is not going to affect you. You're basically just observing it and using certain parts of it to step into whatever role that you're choosing to do.
Alrighty. Next
Each
question.
one of these can expand to a lot more, but it was just going to give you that.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay.
What's your opinion of cannabis?
Okay. When it comes to cannabis, like anything, any herbs and whatever else that we use at this point in time, they can facilitate. However, what happens is a lot of people put a lot of dependency on it and a reliance that it actually helps you shift your state. You can use that temporarily if necessary, but that's not a dependency you want to do. You want to really go into that clear state on yourself, because a lot of these things like cannabis is not really high vibration. It's not. But it is high compared to some other people, or a lot of other people, when they're playing in the depth of the inverted world, where they're going into inverted 3D deep and 2D and 1D, then the cannabis is a higher vibration. So when they experience it or ingest it or whatever it is, it does uplift them. And a lot of times the cannabis actually changes some of the rock solid patterns. But the thing is, if you're starting to notice that that is a requirement for you, then a dependency is being set up, and that's not what you want, because the cannabis in its pure state will only bring you so far. You really have to go a lot farther, because the cannabis is still of a lower frequency than where we need to go at this point in time. And a lot of the herbs and whatever else, they're all complementary. But what's happening is a lot of people are using the cannabis for escape. They're not actually spending the time to connect with their body, connect with their environment, connect with it, and then see how you can step in from your own self-empowered state, rather than, let me take this to feel good right now, or to, take care of certain things so I don't have to address my patterns or anything of that nature. This is the thing. It's a lot of people put energy into alcohol and other substances and food and whatever else, and cannabis at this point in time, cigarettes, whatever, because we tend to feel we create a pattern that is, my escape, that is my, safe space or whatever it is. So you really don't want to give that power. So as much as people are using it as a medicinal aspect of it, it does help. But the thing is, eventually, and I don't mean eventually in a long way down the road, you need to address why it's there, why there's even a need for it. Because the need is only like a little, soothing effect of some sort. And it may bring in a certain frequency that is, because you may have an illness, for example, that is a very low frequency, maybe at 50. And the cannabis may bring you to 150 or 200 or 250 in its most purest form of Hertz frequency. So it's going to be, better, and it's not going to have those lower frequencies affecting you as much. But the thing is, you need to go further than that. And why is it down there, first of all? So you want to look at that. That's why you need to address your stories, programs, belief systems, and patterns, and whatever else. And so I would say at this point in time, use the process I just shared before, just earlier, and bring yourself to your true state, true self, and activate that pure love. And you'll notice that as you do that, and it becomes more infused in yourself, that it will override any cannabis you can take.
Okay. Next question. I've been witnessing a lot of resistance in the past week to stay in my body and feel everything. Feel everything I've been feeling. It has felt like a certain death and has felt like a regression. Any advice for us souls that prefer to leave our bodies via numbing out, sugar primarily, and this is even with regular meditation, shadow clearing, etc.?
Yeah, it can get overwhelming, especially with everything that's flushing through right now. It's going to, we have a pattern that we've established of running away, hiding, use certain substance to numb us or anything of that nature, which could be sugar, could be cannabis, could be alcohol, could be any types of things that we may take to numb any part of it. But realizing that it's there and say, okay, what am I trying to achieve while I'm doing that? What am I numbing? And then when you write it out, because you have to write it out, what is numbing? What am I being numbed by? What am I feeling uncomfortable? So wanting to leave the body or leaving, the earth space, you need to ask yourself, what is my reason for it? What do I feel about it? What is playing out with me? Write it all out, and then go to the depth of it and looking at it. What is the main belief or label or definition or anything of that nature or story behind it that makes us feel uncomfortable? Because I've seen other people that are star seeds and whatever else, and really they're because the AI is taking such a role, there's a contrast between, you got the AI at one level with the ego and everything else playing out, and then you have the soul that is advanced, that is basically trying to move through all of this stuff at the same time, and it almost like creates a disconnect because it feels that it's not able to do so. So it's important to realize, if you're feeling that this is playing a big, powerful role, and you may have to look at that, because this all relies on stories, programs, belief systems, and perceptions and programming that it has adopted. So you want to look at, okay, what am I judging here? Am I judging myself? What am I judging myself about? Am I judging the world? Am I judging what I'm looking at? Write out every part of it and elaborate, and then start to acknowledge each part, thank each part, love each part, take time while you're doing it, and then you'll see that it starts to shift. This part becomes more accentuated, and this becomes less of a factor, and running off, beam me up, Scotty, is not going to be on the forefront any longer. Okay. I've gone it myself. I wanted to be beamed up a lot of times, and even though I did, I always came back. So anyways, it's a pretty cool ride, as much as it looks interesting. Go ahead.
Why is COVID spreading so easily?
Well, is it or isn't it? That's the question.
I know.
The thing is, a lot of the stuff that's being shared, how can I put it? Could it be exaggerated? Could it be following a certain pattern of narrative and saying, okay, well, if we're going to lose control, we're going to say it's spreading. We're going to make it look like that. And we're going to label everything possible under that. And we're going to do these tests. And I'm not going to even give all the letters of these tests that so that we don't get censored here. But all these tests that really don't test that at all. So is it really spreading? Or is the concept, the idea, that is spreading? And it's spread on purpose to scare us, to fuel fear so that we can flourish under the AI system. That particular so-called virus, which is basically a protein code, had a different intention when it was constructed. It was not a natural accident, it was constructed. But there's always a purpose behind that. I mean, there's a higher order anyways. Because collectively we decided that it was not going to be used in its intention, collectively, on a superconscious level, with our brother sister souls, it changed its format so that it did not play out as it originally intended. So that it did not create what is being projected is happening. So because it wasn't happening that way, then there was a whole narrative built on the fact that's make them believe it's something like that. That it is a pandemic or whatever you want to call it, whatever they labeled it. Because if you really look at it, are the numbers, are really what's happening true or not? This is just a question I'm asking you. I mean, I see what's going on, I'm observing it. A lot of people may have contradictive ideas about it and so forth, that it is what it is. But there's many other factors that are coming up, or real status and whatever is going on that is saying completely something different. And then if we can scare people that it is spreading, that it is increasing, then we can now introduce this so-called shot. And this shot has further encodements in there that will most likely achieve a different narrative, which was the original, you know, what we originally planned, but now let's throw that in there into the mix. So we're only going to be exposed to, first of all, any form of increase or changes or anything, depending on where the status of humanity is at. Meaning, where they're putting their focus, how much of this fear is going into play, and so forth. You're now noticing that more and more people are questioning, more and more people are not complying, more and more people are starting to see, wait a minute, it doesn't make any sense. More and more people are speaking out. More and more people are choosing, hey, I'm not going to participate that way. I'm not going to get that needle or whatever you want to call the shot or anything of that nature. I'm not going to do that. So is it really what they say it is? No, it isn't. But you know that. Is it devastating? No more than any other version that we've had. Yes, it was intended to be much more, absolutely. Have people been checking out? Absolutely. But those are the people that would have used any method to check out, regardless. They could have used a common whatever you want to call it, flu, cold, whatever. But look at it this way. With this so-called thing of rolling out, many other things have changed. So people are experiencing not only being locked out, but they're also noticing many more people have to look at themselves, and some of the programs and stuff about depression, fears, and whatever else are coming to the surface even more powerful. And then, because it's overwhelming, they're choosing to exit different ways. Overdose, they're doing whatever, you know. The thing is, you have to understand, it doesn't matter what is rolled out. Those are just kind of open windows and doors. But each and every one of us has the full freedom, with the full consciousness, to say, how do I use it or not? And if I use it, what am I going to do? Am I going to have an accentuated experience, or am I going to use it as an exit out? It's all free and optional to you, how you choose to play it out. Each individual does. Don't think anything has power over you, because nothing has power over you. It's just an illusionary part. Go ahead.
Next question. Just hold on for a second. Sorry.
Sure.
128. Explain how ancestors are related to the concept of dimensions.
Okay. How ancestors
Are related to the concept of dimensions. I can't explain any more than that because this is from last week, so I don't know if the person who is on, if the person that sent that question.
Okay. There's different ancestors, so-called. We have what we call ancestors in regards to, well, everything is ancestor, but we have ancestors that are connected within the body construct. Okay? So the lineages stream down through the body construct. We have ancestry layout within the human entity. And then we have the multidimensional soul that has ancestors, which are basically soul families and oversouls and layers of family, or which are basically souls that are interconnected. They are having experiences on different dimensions, on different playgrounds, with different forms and so forth. And we bring some of all of that, which can be applied and utilized here wherever you go. And in this case, because you're here, you're bringing some of your ancestry consciousness and experience and awareness into that. So remember what I was showing, where you have, of course, the body, you have the human entity, you have the multidimensional soul. So the multidimensional part, because if you're looking at the body and if you're looking at the human entity, it's basically the dimension consciousness and the density consciousness of what planet Earth has been playing out for the last 15,000 years. When you're talking about the multidimensional soul, that one brings in experiences and ancestry. How do we say it again? Ancestral. Yes, thank you. Ancestral. Sometimes I get tongue-tied. Ancestral streaming and experience and so forth from different dimensions. And we also have, through the body itself, the DNAs have ancestry chains, because each DNA belongs to a specific species, and the lineage of those species and all the different levels of evolution and experience and consciousness accessibilities is also available. So we have it, there's a multiple amount of streaming when it comes to ancestral input.
The next question is, how can I overcome anxiety when I see my family members still believing in media and old world projections?
Okay, that's a big one for people, because a lot of times people get wrapped up in what's happening with the family and where the family is in their circumstances, and we're all in that same boat. I mean, so how do you deal with the anxiety? Realizing that you have anxiety is the first thing. Write out, what are you anxious about? Because that'll help you determine what is your belief system around why you're feeling anxiety. The anxiety may be losing these people, or the fact that they're going to harm themselves, or the fact that I may, not be able to shift them and so forth, and they're going to have a negative experience which I don't want to see because I love them or I feel connection to them and so forth. So you really want to look at what your anxiety is about. So you write down, I'm feeling anxious about my family being this. So ask yourself then, after you wrote all that out, you say, okay, what is my biggest anxiety about it? What am I afraid of? What am I concerned about? What is really coming up for me? And write out everything. Okay? And then as you're writing it out, go through each and every one and say, okay, so if they choose to do that, how does it affect me? And so forth. Because you have to understand, and you want to write that at the top of the page, everyone is free to have their own experience, and each and every person is their own navigator. It doesn't matter if they are deep into the AI or that they're in their true self. That's where they're at. We've all been at different stages in our lives, and we have to realize that everybody needs whatever they need for them to evolve or to use, to play out whatever role and then choose to do whatever they choose to do with it. So with that realization, you're not going to get so caught up of the fact of whatever they choose. I have family, extended family, siblings, and so forth that are, looking at the option of, going through all of this stuff because they put a lot of energy and faith and time into what the media. So let them have their own experience. It's up to them what they want to do. I do share with them time to time when they're open for it. There are other aspects of looking at it and so forth, but I'm not going to get caught up in it because it's their journey. And I understand that it's their journey. And it's not my job to affect their journey. I can share and remind them certain things if I feel guided to it and the fact that they're open to it. If they're not, then that's okay.
Okay. Another about the vaccine. Okay.
I had a feeling that one was going to keep coming up.
There's lots, actually. We could probably do a whole episode just on that alone because there's lots of concerns around it. Okay. Can non-vaxers be affected if mixing in a relationship with one who has gotten it? Can it transmit via intimacy? I saw people post the need for an app for non-vaxxers. Also, would this be a total clash of alignment and vibration to be in a relationship with one who has? Or can we help them by assisting in the toll and effects the vax will have on them just by our pure presence?
Well, definitely the pure presence will be very powerful for them. Yes, there's a lot of focus on the fact that you have to be careful who gets vaccinated and so forth so that you're not affected because they will ooze out some of that, stuff that they have injected in their body and so forth, and they may affect you. If you're in a relationship and at this point in time you feel still drawn to the relationship, then be okay with that. And really, if you're afraid of it and putting a lot of focus on it, then you will absorb some of those codes and end up playing it out in your life. If you're okay where you're not feeling stressed about it or putting a lot of focus into it, then it's not going to really affect you. Now, if you're looking at yourself and, I'm going to just look for sexual partners or anything of that nature, then at that point, that's a different aspect. Now there you want to look at saying, okay, I want to really relate with ones that I have not because I'm not going to expose too many versions of that through other people. But that's a choice that you make. But the thing is, you don't want to have fear, but at the same time, look at it, say, okay, I want to make a connection which, of different vibes. You have to understand, the person that chooses to be vaccinated is definitely at a different frequency than the person that chooses not to. Okay. Now, sometimes they may match because one may be afraid of the side effects and not choose to do it, and the other one is looking for security and safety or feels gullible enough to be able to say, okay, I need it because I have to work or whatever it is. And you may be at the same frequency, but others are maybe in fear and the other one is in a higher state of consciousness. So just being in your pure state and allow them to have their own experience. You can share with them, your observations. Don't tell them what to do. Your observations, what you've studied, and you really want to get all sides of the matter before you make a choice. You can share all of that, what you've discovered and everything else, but let them decide whatever they choose to decide. And then, hold up that space within yourself by being comfortable. If at some point it feels like you guys are losing touch with each other, then you may choose to go in different directions. And that will be something that will be a choice that you will feel within yourself. Because sometimes what happens is the one that it does alter their accessibility, their frequency and so forth even further than they were already. And then there's more of a misalignment. But the thing is, at that point, you will know if that needs to shift. And there may be a lot of shifting around because of it, because there are, and I've heard quite a few that, one partner is into it and the other one isn't. That already was there to some degree, but it's going to accentuate even further, and that's okay. Just follow your own inner guidance, but don't go into fear and so forth and say, well, now I got to go into protection mode and things like that. If it doesn't resonate, doesn't feel, say, don't connect. You know, if you're just going to have a casual interaction or intimacy or something of that nature, then you kind of want to connect with somebody of the same vibe. Because even vax or non-vax, okay? Whoever you're intimate with affects each other energetically, you know, and in codes and whatever else. Again, each one has their own, you can be exposed to certain things, but it's up to you if you're choosing to have that frequency lower yours or adjust yours or anything of that nature. A lot of times we're not aware of it, and you know, I know that there's been a concern, yet you know, you're intimate with somebody, you're taking on some of their baggage. You don't ever really take anybody's baggage, but what they can do is their frequency and whatever you're taking in as that frequency may trigger some of your old baggage that may be still buried under. So it's really triggers your own stuff, because that's how it all works. I know you have 2 cents to add to that.
No, I just wanted to know, is there not some form of an exchange that takes place on some level between partners that you can take on something? Now, as regards to this vaccine, is there any way that someone can take on any of the effects? I guess when this person was asking this question, could they take on any of the negative effects of the vaccine?
Well, it's never going to be to the same degree as the person that's actually taking it directly, because the thing is, it doesn't, especially this particular one, doesn't leach out that easily, okay? But it does alter some of the chemistry in the body, so some of that chemistry may blend with yours and may can cause some.
Say if you're going to have a child with that person after vaccine, it's going to make a difference in like the DNA between the man,
Yes.
say the
Yes.
man had the vaccine,
Yes. Yes.
and the woman coming together.
Yes.
So there's going to be definitely some effects.
Yes, but you have to understand the baby that's coming through will also have the capacity to select how much of it wants to be affected by it or not. So when we're talking about the vac, okay, you have to understand there's different levels, okay? Most of the people that is choosing are at this vibration right here, and it's going to have whatever impact. Within this range here, it will depend if it's going to be an exit point, if it's going to be something extreme, or it's going to be something that's delayed later. Now, as the vibration increases of that individual and other people around there, you're going into this range here where it's going to have less effect, okay? It still will have some effect, and it can dwarf some of our connection points and so forth. But once you get into this, the planetary and the collective goes to that, even if you've been received this, okay, at this point here, it negates it completely. So if you stick around long enough to allow all of that, then whatever was put into you will clear out. But that's an option. Because you have to understand, some of the individuals that take it on want to play a role for their family, want to play a role for others at that point in time. So they may replicate or use it to express something that would allow others to, wait a minute, maybe I need to reconsider. And then they can turn it off later. So there's a lot of variance and flexibility. It's not cut and dry like it's being projected at this point in time. Some people, when they receive it, feel a disconnect to their higher aspect because it lowers their frequency, and it disrupts also the communication level to a certain degree. Does it cut the cord, cut them completely? No, it doesn't. It may choose a soul later on, much later. It may not want to participate in that environment, but at the same time, the soul is aware of it, and if it needs to alter it anyways, it will. So a lot of times when you hear the fact that, okay, now I'm trying to connect with them, I don't connect with them, there was an agreement already to kind of say, okay, let's do that for a while, or let's do it, period, and play out this role, because whoever's going to be connecting with it or tuning into it will notice it and then can share it with others, so that others will kind of make a different choice. But you know, it still depends on each and every individual, how they want to utilize it. Okay, like anything, any disease, any virus, anything that's out there, because there's many opportunities of how we can experience those restricted or lower states. Okay. Yep.
Okay, next question. When interacting with those who are still in the old world, family, kids, etc., I think you may have answered this. How do we make sure we don't enmesh in their stuff when they're sharing their stories with us?
Well, it's really to pay attention, because when you're interacting with them and so forth, if you're noticing a shifting in yourself, okay, you're noticing that your vibration is going lower, you're feeling a little bit heavier, you're feeling a little bit down or something of that nature, or you feel more uncomfortable, then you know that their energy is affecting you. But really, their energy is only accentuating what's still active within yourself. Because if you are not having anything active in yourself, when you're there, it doesn't matter what they say, what they do, how they play out, whatever, it doesn't affect you. You don't go through a shifting where your vibration drops or anything of that nature. You will stay in your true state or true self, which is of a higher vibration, which continues to go higher. In fact, then you're affecting them. You're allowing them to kind of show them the path, even without doing anything, just energetically, what's possible and how that feels much more aligned rather than the state that they're playing in. So usually just pay attention to how you feel, and then you know it's playing a role. But please keep in mind that if you're feeling a shift in yourself, it's just really triggering, activating some active program, story, or belief system that is still, like I said, active. And so you want to address that. Okay, I was there, they said this, or whatever it is, and then I started to feel down, I started to feel depressed, I started to feel low. What's my story? What was going on there? What did they say? And it has nothing to do with what they said. Is what's the story behind your interpretation of it, or what your story is of yourself? Because it really goes back to always ourself and say, what's my story? What's my belief system about myself or anything of that nature? Because no one can make you feel bad. They can play a role, they can push your buttons, and then you feel bad. But you can't feel bad unless you have a story that relates with it, or the fact that they triggered that story, so that's, and the reason that that's coming up is because it's still active. So you want to address that. You want to write it out, see what the story is. You have to still give power to it, acknowledge it fully, thank it fully, love it fully, and free it.
This question is probably similar and probably be a similar response. How do we ensure when we walk into a lower frequency environment, we're not taken down and instead are in a position to uplift it?
Well, the thing is, if you are choosing always to be your true self, always choosing to be in a high vibration no matter what it is, you just keep reminding yourself until it becomes natural, where I choose to be the one that shines, okay? I choose to be the brilliant light that I am, the brilliant essence that I am, no matter where I go. So if you're feeling that you walk into an environment and it's starting to lower your frequency, then you go in yourself while you're there. I activate, first of all, calling your soul fully, activate full home frequency to the fullest degree, activating my highest aspect of myself, my source essence. I activate fully, and I fully embody all of it, and you'll see that your energy goes up. And now, no matter what's in the environment, what's in the group, or whatever it is, you're not going to go down. You're actually going to continue going up, and you're actually changing the energies of the environment. So that's the thing, is whenever you're seeing a low, activate that part. If a story comes up, they make me feel bad, of course, that's something that you want to address. Maybe you can't address it right on the spot. Write it down somewhere, or keep a note of it in your mind, and then when you're at home alone or whatever it is, you say, okay, now let me take a look at what they made me feel. Why did I feel down at the time? What did they say? Oh, they reminded me that one time I believed I wasn't good enough, or that the fact that I failed, or I made poor choices, or that I was not equal to them, or the fact that I didn't follow their rules, or whatever it is, and I felt lower because as a kid, or whatever it is. You want to address all of those things. Those are all the things you want to get rid of, because that's all of the AI self not your true self.
Another vaccine related question. I've been reading a lot about energy healers who have worked on people who have recently had the vaccine. They can't feel the soul connected anymore. The souls seem to be hovering and connected by only a cord. I think you just talked about this.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering if some of these are isolated in situations, or is this what can happen to those taking the V?
Yeah, it's in a way it is isolated. Again, taking the V at this point in time will alter the frequency. It will have a tendency to lower the frequency. The reason that somebody's even choosing it because they're already in a low frequency, already in fear or feeling that in some way they don't have a choice. They're disempowered. So it's like, I need to have this to feel secure. I need to have this so that I can have my own freedom. And that's because they're at a lower state. Because if they're in their true sense, they wouldn't make that choice. They wouldn't even look at it. So sometimes what happens is some of them will choose that the soul may be at a certain vibration and says, okay, I'm not going to embody it. I'm going to let this whole thing play out, and other people are going to see it. I'm going to stay connected. I'm not leaving, but at the same time, I'm going to leave that whole experiencer of the body and the human entity and so forth to go through that so that others can pick it up or others can see the difference so that they become more aware of the direction of things at that point. So it's not going to be across the board, but it does continue to lower your vibration. But for you to choose it, you already have to be in a low vibration. And thinking that, oh, I'm an enlightened being, but you're afraid, that's just an illusionary part. Well, because I better clarify that. Enlightened being meaning I'm, higher vibration or whatever else. Because the higher the vibration, you have no fear. And at that point in time, you have the freedom. You see yourself, you sense and know within yourself that you're an empowered being, and you have the freedom to choose going one way or another with this whole offering, because it is just an offering. Everything is just an offering. Even though it looks like it's mandated, it's just an offering. It's up to us to say, hey, no thanks. And if you have to change something like career or whatever it is because of it, no problem. Go ahead. Because that playground no longer suits you.
Okay. Please explain detail on what soul fragments are and if they still be in existence in the shift.
Okay. A lot of the fragmentation that we were experiencing through the soul, because what was happening is the soul would actually go into parallel versions or parallel worlds and so forth. And what it would do is that only a small portion of the soul would reside on this playground, and the soul would actually fragment itself to go play in different playgrounds. And at times it would take, even in this playground, it would create different aspects. A lot of that has already shifted, very much so that, there's more of a unification of the multidimensional soul. Even the human entity used to kind of create fragmentations of itself. But a lot of that, with all these energies that have been going, all the changes that has been happening is that is it defragmentation? Defragging. They're coming. Or they're coming back. Yeah, they're coming back together. So a lot of it is being coming back. So the fragmentation is not. So now it's like, instead of having multiple fragments of itself, it's like more whole, and saying it's going to here and it's going to visit different aspects of itself to kind of get a feel for it. But it chooses one locale to where to put the most of the focus in. So in this particular case, it's playing here. But, like anything, it can actually look at parallel versions of itself where it can say, okay. And a lot of times during the night, we will visit the parallel version of yourself where, it's having a different choice, a different experience, just to kind of see it. It's like, it's not a focal point, but it's also an optional thing, because there's packets of information or experiences there that it can bring into this part. So a lot of that fragmentation stuff is, it's been reversing for a while now.
explain how the need for income and finances will shift in the short term, i.e. over this year, 2021?
Yeah, that's a tough one because a lot of that stuff hasn't been sorted out. Now,
Is my mic on when I ask?
I don't know.
Don't we try it again?
Try again.
Okay. I don't know if my mic was on when I asked that question, so I'm just going to ask it again. It's on now, right?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Can you please explain how the need for income and finances will shift in the short term, i.e. over this year, 2021?
Okay. Well, it's already going through a shifting process at the moment. It's a tough one, in a sense. The important, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think it's going to be a bit of a process.
It is a bit of a process. So the importance of it and how much value we've given to it is shifting for many of us. Now, some people are diving deeper and I need to build wealth or build a nest egg or something of that nature because they're still in that survival mode and they're still very AI based. But anyone that's actually going through, you will notice that you will shift your priorities. You'll still do some things here and there that will bring income, but the income, the flow of income is not going to dictate how you feel, first of all, because you're going to be shifting away the importance of it and the anchors that you put towards it and the value that is put into it. And then also at the same time, you will look at some of the things that you've invested a lot of that energy and you will, see if it actually is of a true value or not. And you'll find that you may minimize certain parts of it. And the other thing is too, there is going to be more fluid resources without putting the old modalities in place. So going into it, if you need to have a lot of your programs come up around the money thing, the fear, the survival, the so forth, then it may seem like it will dry up or it will get tight for you or something of that nature to bring up those stories. You want to definitely address it, like I've explained it many times here through this episode, where you write it all out, lay it all out, what's your fears, whatever it is, and you want to address that. In other cases, you'll find that it just starts to show up in different ways where it comes in to support you as you need it. Now, there's a lot of focus with certain people right now that, pricing is going up like crazy for, different essentials and also the housing and whatever else at this point, and it's going chaotic. Are we ever going to be able to have any of this stuff? This is just the really accentuated component of it. Eventually that will sort out. As for the year, flow with whatever you have there, follow the guidance of how you feel. I mean, there's some money flowing in from what the government's giving away at this point in time, and not to put so much value into it, but use whatever you can at this point and do your own offerings or whatever it is. And as we're going along, a lot of that will shift. Now, there is some money readjustment that's going on, which is taking it away from the control structure that is now and coming more free. When I say free, meaning not controlled to the same degree, that may come into play. That is all in the works. How it's going to unfold and so forth, I don't have a clear point of it because they wouldn't share it with me in the sense of when I'm looking at it, there's various avenues that are available. The thing is, if you got concern of it, you want to get rid of the concern, flow with it, feel guided to do whatever it is while the resources come in. The importance will shift. The value that you put into different things that you use the money for will also shift. It doesn't mean that you have to reduce your life, but at some point you find that some of the things are just distractions or not necessary, and that you may cut those out. But then there's also other resources coming in. As far as I see that there are measures being taken so that there is going to be a releasing of further resources to assist us as a transitional period. As we go along further, of course, the money thing is going to change a lot and then eventually be eliminated completely.
Okay, having many dreams of my best friend and a family member who passed away. The dreams are very lucid. I usually know they will leave soon in the dream and I only can see them. Is this just their human entity still playing out? Or if they are in my soul family, is it their soul making communication? Or just stored random memories in my conscious space?
Well, it's all three actually, because what ends up happening is whatever, they're going to show up to provide you a message, to clarify an experience, to, bring certain thing that would be benefiting you at this point in time into the dream state for you so that you can utilize it in your waking state. So some of it are memories that are needing to be processed. Other parts of it, because the human entity will still continue to present itself at times if it's beneficial. The multidimensional version of it that will come in will also take on what seems like this, but that multidimensional one will bring a much more clarity, even more than what that friend would have represented for you that is no longer here. So it may share with you, and I've seen that happen with others, but also in my own personal experience where other people have passed away. And when their multidimensional soul communicates and shows up, that you could see that they're much more evolved, much more conscious and so forth, and they're not so stuck in their old role that they were playing. When the human entity shows up, then it will have some form of similarity, but it doesn't have the same restrictions. Because the main restriction that's there is this. Because when they're not in form any longer and they don't have the software in place, then you really tend to experience the higher multidimensional version, their higher human entity version, and their higher physical innate consciousness version of themselves. And a lot of times if they present themselves, they have an offering, they have some information, or they have some message or something like that to assist you really to create a shift within yourself. So it can be any of those. And the reason I'm saying any of them, because it will all depend on what you need, when you need it, how you need it.
Okay, last question.
Okay.
Or do you want another question?
We'll do one more, but then we'll have to catch the rest of it next time.
Yeah, okay. All right, last question. Again, about the vaccines. Looks like Ontario is very dense these days and the fear is ramping up. Premier wants everyone to take the jab and talking about going door to door. My question concerns something you touched upon last time. If the jabs get out of control, something will be done by those controlling the experiment. What will it take as now the children, our future, are being impacted?
Okay. The thing is, there's an honoring and respect of each individual's experience. It doesn't matter, the level of density and so forth that is playing. We're in Ontario ourselves, so if they're going to go door to door and whatever else, again, you still have the freedom to say yes or no to whatever is playing out. If the children are exposed at this point in time, they still have, from a higher perspective, if they actually get involved in it, because they will communicate with the parents, even though they're not they'll be communicating telepathically, putting in the message, no, I don't want to do this, and I don't want to, whatever. But if they do choose to take it on, the amount of impact will depend on what that child or even another adult or teenager, whatever it is, would like to represent. Because as much as it is what it is, it's up to the individual to say, am I going to utilize all of its codes, or is it going to be utilized in a way where it affects me so I can be a demonstration to the family and so forth, as a wake-up call or anything of that nature, or not? Okay, so it will be something that each individual soul, doesn't matter what age, because you have to understand, as much as a child is in a small body and is going through a development stage of sorts, you have to understand that the body's an extension of 15,000 years of wisdom, and the wisdom of all the sentient beings and Gaia. The human entity is the wisdom of 15,000 years of incarnations. And if it didn't incarnate all 15,000 years because it came online later on, because as the population grew, then it still has resources from the collective human entity of that wisdom. The multidimensional soul is bringing wisdoms of many incarnations from many planets, from many dimensions, from many realms and many parallel aspects of itself. And so just because it's in a small body, there is still a lot of power and consciousness and within a small package. So it's not helpless. And yes, some people say, well, you know, what happens to these kids that are tortured and, you know, done all those despicable things of that nature. Yeah, it's not a great thing to look at it from any perspective at this point in time, but those children are the ones that actually choose to accept the task to create an awareness for others to say, okay, we're going to stop this. So we're going to stop it. And we are already doing so. But they know they are mortal. They know they can't be affected by it. And yes, they may have that experience, but that experience at this point in time is an offering that they are providing. As any of us have gone through that in different stages in our lives. Many of us have been tortured and killed and whatever else at different times in different incarnations and so forth. And you know, we've gone through some pretty savage types of experiences in the last 10,000 years. So many of us have gone through a lot of that from a physical and human entity part, and in some cases even the multidimensional, even if it wasn't on this dimension.
Okay, we're done.
Okay.
We're done for today, and we'll have the ones we haven't gotten to yet still on our list, so we
Okay.
will continue.
Did we
next
take
time.
care of the ones that you had on the computer, or there's still
Those
some?
were the one. Yeah, there's still some more. We haven't got to your list yet.
Okay.
Because you had a different list and I had a different list.
Okay.
So there's a few questions from today that day. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Okay.
So, but we had an hour first of you did you know.
Yeah, and the next episode I may not have enough
We'll
something
we'll
new
go
to
right
bring
into
up.
questions.
I never know what's going to happen each time I come on, because I did not. We were planning on just doing the Q&A portion of it, but then it came that we had to talk about being true self, because the true self is what is going to help us really govern through all of that. So a lot of the questions that we've addressed at this point in time in your true state or true self, that a lot of that stuff you will be able to see it for what it is and navigate through it without going through getting lost in it or anything of that nature. So right now, with the chaos that we're experiencing, being your true self is the most powerful way to be. Go ahead.
I was going to say, it'll come to a time where we won't be asking all these questions because we will just know it.
Yeah,
we'll
exactly.
know who we are, and none of it will matter the same.
Yes, exactly. Anyways, guys, if you feel inspired by this, share it, subscribe if you haven't subscribed, comment if you choose to comment, thumbs up or thumbs down, whatever, you know, and if you want to continue to support us through this work that we're doing, we do have a link in the description so you can contribute. We welcome contributions. It's not a necessity in the sense we're saying, well, we're giving you this, we need that. No, it doesn't work that way. It's whatever you feel from your own self-guidance and so forth. We always appreciate it. All helps us completely. If you want to check out any of our workshops, the link is also there. If you want to join the community where you get emails every so often, we don't bombard you by it. There's also a link for that. And if you missed the last workshop we just did a few weeks ago, that's also in there. And it's still available on its contribution basis. There is a recommended amount, but you can offer whatever you choose. We make as much content as possible to help you through this journey, because we're doing this together. And this is why I put so much emphasis on giving you all this stuff and working with it to trigger your own memory, to go into that empowered state so that we can collectively do it. It's not something I can do by myself or anybody by themselves. Remember, we are in it together. So this is why I say share it, because more people that come on board much quicker and so forth, that we are, and I'm not the only resources, there are other resources. The resources that I do provide is the highest level I can possibly provide at this point in time, which my soul is the one that's actually communicating. and it's outside of the polarity world and all of that stuff. So anyways, until next time, have a blast, and we'll see you, I guess, in about a week's time.
Yeah, next Tuesday at 4 o'clock again.
At 4 o'clock, yes. We had to go 5 because I had to do a show earlier today that started at 2 o'clock and finished close to 4 o'clock, and I needed the space to kind of set up everything for our 5 o'clock. That's why we started later. So I've been kind of talking for the last 4 plus
hours.
4 plus hours, and time to
Take a
stop.
break.
So take a break. Okay, guys.
Thank you,
Go have
everybody.
a blast. We'll see you
Bye.
next time.